Human and the alien girl step into an empty temple, and the statues rise only for him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main characters. Ethan Miller had always been fascinated by ancient ruins. A young archaeologist from the United States, he had spent most of his career uncovering long-forgotten secrets from civilizations lost to time. But nothing in his past prepared him for what he was about to encounter deep in the heart of a desert. He had been tracking rumors of a mysterious temple, said to be located in a remote part of the world, where no one had dared to venture for centuries. His curiosity and passion led him to this place. There, in the heart of the ruins, he found something unexpected. As he stepped into the temple, he was greeted by the overwhelming silence that seemed to swallow every sound. The air was thick with dust, and the walls were lined with strange symbols, some of which seemed to glow faintly. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. As he ventured further inside, he noticed the statues. They were massive, intricately carved, and stood in lifelike poses, as though frozen in time. But there was one detail that Ethan couldn't shake off. They seemed to be staring directly at him. Just as he was about to examine one of the statues closer, a soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "You shouldn't be here." Ethan turned around in shock. Standing in the doorway was a woman who appeared to be human, but there was something about her that didn't quite fit. Her skin shimmered with an ethereal glow, and her eyes, a striking shade of silver, reflected the light in a way that was almost otherworldly. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, still trying to process the strange sight in front of him. "My name is Zara," she replied calmly, stepping into the dimly lit room. "And I'm not from this planet." Ethan blinked, confused. What do you mean?" Zara smiled faintly, her gaze shifting to the statues that surrounded them. "This place is more than just an ancient ruin," she said. "It's a place of power. And you're here because you were chosen." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Chosen? The thought made no sense. But before he could ask more questions, the temple seemed to react to their presence. A low rumble shook the ground, and the statues began to stir. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, they moved. Ethan's heart raced. He took a step back, realizing that something was happening here that he couldn't explain. And then, it happened. One of the statues, the largest one, slowly turned its head toward him. The others followed suit, all their eyes locking onto him. The statues weren't just lifelike, they were alive. And for some reason, they seemed to respond only to him. Zara's voice broke through his shock. "I told you," she said. "The statues will only react to you. You're the one they've been waiting for." Ethan didn't know what to think. His mind raced as the realization began to set in. He wasn't just in an ancient temple. He was part of something much larger. Something that was just beginning to unfold. "I know this is hard to believe, but I'm telling you the truth," Zara said, her voice steady yet filled with an intensity that Ethan couldn't ignore. He looked around, still trying to wrap his mind around the surreal situation unfolding before him. The statues were alive, but more than that, they were clearly responding to him. You see, these statues aren't just relics of a forgotten civilization. They were created to protect something very important. And now, they've awakened because you're here. Ethan shook his head, his thoughts spinning. "What do you mean they've awakened? And why me?" Zara's gaze softened as she stepped closer, her eyes never leaving him. "Because, Ethan, you are connected to this place. It's in your blood. You were born for this." "Connected to this place?" Ethan repeated, trying to process her words. He was just an archaeologist. He had no special bloodline, no family history tied to anything extraordinary. He had simply come here to explore. Zara nodded slowly, her voice growing quieter as if she were sharing a secret. "This temple is ancient, much older than anything you've studied. It was built by an advanced civilization, one that had knowledge and technology far beyond what we have today. And you, Ethan, are the descendant of one of their most important figures." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Descendant? What do you mean?" "Long ago, the people who built this temple had a vision. They knew that one day, this world would face a crisis, a force so powerful that nothing could stop it. and they created the statues as a way to protect the world from that threat. But they needed a guardian, someone who could awaken the statues and unlock their true power. Zara paused, letting her words sink in. That guardian is you. Ethan took a step back, trying to process everything. But why didn't I know this? Why hasn't anyone ever told me? Zara sighed, her expression darkening. Because the knowledge was hidden. The descendants of the temple builders kept it a secret, passed down through generations. And for centuries, they waited. But you. She paused, her eyes narrowing as she studied him. You must have felt it, right? The pull, the connection, the sense that something was guiding you here. Ethan's mind raced. He had felt it, yes. An inexplicable sense that had driven him to this exact place, at this exact moment. But he had never understood it. I thought it was just my obsession with ancient history, he said quietly. Zara shook her head. No, it was more than that. It was fate. The ground trembled slightly under their feet, and the statues shifted again, their eyes still locked onto Ethan, as if waiting for his next move. Zara stepped forward, her expression serious. We don't have much time. The statues are only a small part of what you need to understand. There is a much greater power here, one that you must unlock. But you can't do it alone. Ethan swallowed hard. What do I have to do? Zara reached out and placed a hand gently on his arm. You need to open your mind, Ethan. Trust the temple, trust the statues. Let them guide you. But remember, it won't be easy. There will be challenges ahead. Dark forces are already aware of your presence here, and they will stop at nothing to prevent you from fulfilling your destiny. Ethan nodded, his resolve slowly solidifying. He didn't know what awaited him, but he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't turn back now. Ithaca. Ethan felt a strange weight settle on his shoulders as he processed Zara's words. The statues, the temple, the hidden power, everything felt too big for him to fully grasp. Yet there was no denying the sense of inevitability that seemed to pulse through the air around him. He had never imagined that his passion for archaeology would lead him to something like this. I'm not sure I understand, Ethan said, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. Zara turned, her gaze focused on the statues, who seemed to be waiting for something, as though they knew exactly what needed to happen next. You don't need to understand everything right now, she said softly, her voice calming. But what you do need to understand is that the power inside this temple is real, and you are connected to it in a way that no one else is. You can unlock its secrets, but only if you trust yourself and the temple. Ethan swallowed, looking down at his hands as if the answers might be written there. And if I fail? Zara looked at him, her eyes intense. You won't fail, she said firmly. I will be here to guide you, but you must trust the process. Ethan hesitated. The ground trembled again, and the statues shifted once more. Their eyes remained on him, unblinking, as if awaiting an order. What happens if I don't? He asked. Zara's lips curled into a faint smile, though there was an underlying seriousness in her expression. The temple's power will remain dormant. The statues will remain frozen, and the world will continue its path toward disaster. The weight of her words hung in the air, suffocating in its finality. Ethan looked at Zara, then back at the statues that seemed to live, that seemed to be waiting for him to make a choice. He didn't fully understand what was at stake, but he knew one thing. He couldn't let it all fall apart. Not now. What do I need to do first? He asked, his voice quieter, determined. Zara nodded approvingly, stepping aside to reveal a large, ancient pedestal at the center of the room. The first step is to connect with the energy of the temple, she said, her voice almost a whisper. You need to reach out and let the temple's energy flow through you. Only then will the statues respond. Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself. The air in the temple was thick, almost heavy, with an energy he couldn't fully explain. But he could feel it. The pull, the call to something much greater than himself. He approached the pedestal slowly, reaching out to touch it. The moment his fingers brushed the stone, a surge of warmth spread through his body. It was subtle at first, but then it grew stronger, like a current flowing through his veins. The symbols on the walls began to glow faintly, and the statues shifted again, their movements more deliberate this time. Ethan gasped, pulling his hand back as the energy intensified, almost overwhelming him. Zara's voice broke through the rising tension. You mustn't be afraid, she said. Let the energy flow. Don't resist it. Ethan closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, and then he reached out again, this time with more confidence. As his fingers made contact with the pedestal, the energy surged through him once more, but this time, he welcomed it. The warmth spread through his body, and with it came a deep sense of understanding, as though the knowledge of the temple, its purpose, and its power were being shared with him. The statues responded, their eyes lighting up, and the room seemed to hum with energy. For a moment, Ethan was consumed by it, feeling like he was part of something ancient, something much larger than himself. When the energy finally subsided, Ethan opened his eyes, his breath coming in short gasps. He looked at Zara, who was watching him with a mixture of approval and caution. "You did it," she said quietly. "The temple has accepted you. But this is just the beginning. There's still much more to uncover. Are you ready?" Ethan looked around at the statues, at the temple that had come to life in response to his touch. He didn't know exactly what he had just unlocked, but he felt it, an undeniable connection to something far beyond his understanding. "I'm ready," he said, his voice steady now, filled with determination. The next step of the journey had begun. Ithaca. Ethan felt the weight of Zara's gaze as he stood there, his hand still resting on the pedestal. The energy of the temple lingered in the air around him, filling him with a sense of purpose that he had never known. The statues, now glowing with an inner light, stood as silent witnesses to his transformation. "It's done," Zara said, her voice low but full of reverence. "The temple has accepted you, Ethan. But this is only the first step. There's much more ahead." Ethan nodded slowly, still trying to process what had just happened. He had felt the surge of power, the connection, but now, as the energy ebbed, a deep sense of uncertainty began to settle in. What did all of this mean? And why was he chosen for this? Zara seemed to sense his confusion. "The power of the temple is ancient," she continued, her eyes scanning the statues that surrounded them. "It was designed to awaken only when the time was right, when the guardian was ready. You are that guardian. But what does that mean for me?" Ethan asked, his voice quieter now, weighed down by the enormity of it all. Zara stepped closer, her gaze never leaving him. "It means that the future of this world, perhaps even the universe, rests in your hands," she said, her voice steady. "The statues, the energy, and the temple are all part of a larger plan. But to fully understand it, you need to go deeper." Ethan swallowed hard. He had always thought of himself as a scholar, someone who searched for answers in ancient texts and ruins. But now, it felt like he was at the center of something much bigger, something that no amount of studying could have prepared him for. "How do I go deeper?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Zara reached out, gently placing her hand on his shoulder. "You need to follow the path of the temple. It will guide you to the answers, but you must trust it." Ethan looked at the pedestal again, its surface still warm from the energy that had flowed through it. "And the statues?" "The statues are part of the key," Zara said, her expression darkening slightly. "They are the guardians of the temple's secrets. They won't reveal everything at once. You must earn their trust." Ethan nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. He didn't fully understand what lay ahead, but he could feel the pull, the need to continue. As he stood there, surrounded by the ancient statues, a new thought occurred to him. What happens if I fail? Zara's gaze softened. "Failure isn't an option," she said quietly. "But if you do falter, if you don't trust the process, the temple's power will remain dormant, and the world will remain vulnerable. The force we've been preparing for will come, and there will be no one to stop it." Ethan felt a chill at the thought. The weight of the responsibility pressed down on him, but there was also a sense of resolve beginning to form inside him. He had no choice but to continue. "I understand," he said, his voice steady. Zara gave him a small smile, nodding in approval. "Good. Now, let's move forward." She turned and began to walk towards the far side of the temple, her steps purposeful and sure. Ethan followed her, his mind racing with questions. Where would this path lead? What would he discover next? And what exactly was this great force that threatened the world? As they moved deeper into the temple, the air grew thicker, the walls more intricate, and the atmosphere more charged with ancient power. Ethan could feel the weight of history pressing in around him, as if the temple itself were alive, waiting for him to unlock its final secrets. He wasn't sure what awaited him at the end of this journey, but for the first time, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. Ithaca. As Ethan and Zara continued through the depths of the temple, the air around them grew heavier, almost electric, with each step they took. The walls of the ancient structure seemed to pulse with a quiet, unseen force, as though they were alive, watching them. Ethan could feel the weight of history pressing in on him, and every echo of his footsteps sounded like a call to something far greater than he could yet comprehend. He looked over at Zara, who was walking with quiet confidence, her eyes fixed ahead as though she could already see the path they needed to take. She didn't seem to be bothered by the oppressive atmosphere that seemed to grow thicker with each passing moment. "How do you know where we're going?" Ethan asked, his voice low but filled with curiosity. Zara glanced back at him and smiled faintly. "The temple speaks to me," she said simply. "It has been waiting for you, for this moment, for a long time. I'm simply guiding you to where you need to be." Ethan nodded, trying to make sense of her words. He had come to accept that the temple held knowledge beyond anything he had ever encountered. But Zara's words made him feel as though there was something more to this journey than even she was willing to explain. As they moved further into the temple, the path began to narrow, leading them to a large chamber that seemed to hum with energy. In the center of the room stood an enormous stone altar, surrounded by a ring of glowing symbols. The altar was adorned with intricate carvings, and at its center was a deep, circular indentation, almost like a socket waiting for something to fit inside. "This is where the real test begins," Zara said, her voice steady but tinged with anticipation. Ethan felt his pulse quicken as he approached the altar. He could sense the power radiating from it, a force that seemed to be pulling him closer. His fingers brushed the surface of the stone, and a faint vibration ran through his body, as though the very stone was alive, responding to his touch. "What is this place?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zara stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the altar. "This is the heart of the temple," she explained. "It's where the power is concentrated, where the true potential of the statues lies. But to unlock that power, you must place your hand in the indentation." Ethan hesitated for a moment, his mind racing. Could he really do this? Was he ready to take the next step? But as he looked at Zara, he saw the quiet confidence in her eyes, and something inside him stirred. This was why he was here. This was what he was meant to do. He placed his hand in the indentation, and the moment his fingers made contact with the stone, a surge of energy shot through him. The room seemed to light up, the symbols on the walls glowing brighter, the air around them crackling with power. Ethan felt as though he was connected to the very core of the temple, as if its ancient energy was flowing through him. His vision blurred for a moment, and in the haze, he saw flashes of images, visions of a world in turmoil, of a great force rising, of a future that seemed uncertain. The vision faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Ethan breathless and shaken. He pulled his hand back, his heart racing. "What was that?" he asked, his voice shaky. Zara's expression was solemn as she looked at him. "That was the future, Ethan," she said quietly. "A future that is still uncertain, a future that depends on the choices you make. The power you've unlocked here is the key to that future." Ethan swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. He had seen a glimpse of what was to come, and it was nothing like what he had expected. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined, and the path ahead was filled with uncertainty. But in that moment, as he looked at the stone altar, he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't stop now, not when so much was at risk. "Ithaca." Ethan stood motionless, his hand still hovering above the stone indentation as the last remnants of the vision faded. The weight of what he had just seen pressed down on him. Images of a world on the brink of disaster, a future where dark forces seemed to rise against everything he knew. He shook his head, trying to dispel the unsettling images, but they lingered in his mind. Zara, ever watchful, stood a few steps behind him, her gaze focused on the altar. "The future is not set in stone," she said softly, her voice full of quiet certainty. "What you saw are possible outcomes, the consequences of actions yet to be taken." Ethan turned to look at her, his brow furrowed in confusion. "But why show me that? Why show me the world falling apart?" Zara's eyes softened, her expression thoughtful. "Because, Ethan, you are the one who can stop it. The temple has chosen you as its guardian, but your choices will determine whether the future you saw becomes reality. The power you've unlocked is not just a weapon. It's a way to influence the flow of time, to guide the course of events. Ethan's mind raced. He had always thought of himself as a man of reason, someone who relied on logic and facts. But what was happening now defied everything he had ever understood. He was standing in a temple that seemed to stretch across time itself, holding the fate of the world in his hands. And yet, he felt so unprepared for what was to come. How do I even begin to understand all of this? He asked, his voice tinged with frustration. Zara stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. You don't have to understand everything right now, she said. The answers will come in time. But the first step is to trust the power within you, the power that the temple has awakened. She gestured to the altar, where the energy still hummed in the air. The energy is a part of you now. You must learn to harness it, to control it, or it will control you. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing thoughts. He wasn't sure how to move forward, but he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't turn back now. The path was set. He looked at the altar once more, feeling the power pulsing just beneath its surface. He didn't know what would come next, but he could no longer deny that he was connected to this place in ways he couldn't yet understand. What do I need to do? He asked, his voice firm now, ready to take the next step. Zara smiled faintly, a knowing look in her eyes. You need to go deeper, she said. The altar is the key, but to truly unlock its power, you must enter the heart of the temple. There, you will find what you are seeking. Ethan nodded, his mind already moving ahead, processing the information. There was still so much to discover, and he wasn't sure what awaited him in the heart of the temple, but he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. He had no choice. The future of the world depended on it. As they moved toward the deeper chambers of the temple, the air grew colder, and the energy in the walls seemed to thrum with anticipation. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the temple itself was watching them, guiding their every step. He felt a flicker of doubt, but it was quickly replaced by determination. The path ahead was unclear, but there was one thing he knew for sure. He was ready to meet whatever was waiting for him in the heart of the temple. The true journey was just beginning. Ithaca. The deeper Ethan and Zara ventured into the temple, the more the air seemed to hum with an ancient power. The walls, once rough and untouched, now seemed to glow with an ethereal light, pulsating with energy that resonated deep within him. Every step they took echoed through the vast, cavernous chambers, the sound amplified by the immense stillness around them. Ethan could feel his heartbeat synchronize with the rhythm of the temple, as though it, too, was alive, waiting for something, or perhaps someone. We're close now, Zara said, her voice steady and calm. Her eyes, always focused and knowing, never wavered as she led the way through the winding corridors. Ethan followed her closely, his senses heightened by the growing sense of urgency. He couldn't explain it, but something inside him told him that the time to act was now, and that whatever lay ahead would require every ounce of his strength and understanding. The further they went, the more Ethan could feel the power that the temple held, a power that seemed to be connected to him in ways he couldn't explain. It was as if he was becoming part of this place, its energy flowing through him, shaping his thoughts, his very being. They reached a massive, circular chamber, its high ceiling lost in shadows above them. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, bathed in a soft, golden light. The pedestal was simple in design, but Ethan could feel its significance. This was where everything had been leading. This was the heart of the temple. As they stepped into the room, the air around them grew still, almost too still. Ethan's pulse quickened as he stepped forward, drawn to the pedestal as if by an invisible force. The moment he approached, the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter, their intricate patterns shifting and moving like living entities. The golden light surrounding the pedestal grew stronger, bathing the room in a warm, welcoming glow. This is it, Zara said, her voice filled with reverence. This is where you will unlock your true power. Ethan looked at her, confusion still clouding his mind. What exactly do I need to do? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Zara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped aside, her gaze never leaving the pedestal. You must place your hand on it, she said. But you must do so with complete trust in the temple and in yourself. The power within you will guide you, but only if you open yourself to it. Ethan hesitated for a moment, his mind racing with doubts and questions. What if he wasn't ready? What if he wasn't worthy of this power? But deep down, he knew he couldn't turn back. He had come this far, and there was no going back now. With a steady breath, he placed his hand on the pedestal. The moment his skin touched the surface, a surge of energy shot through him. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Pure, unfiltered power, flooding his senses, making him feel both weightless and grounded at the same time. The room around him seemed to dissolve, and for a moment, he was no longer aware of where he was. He was everywhere and nowhere. Images flashed before his eyes, visions of distant places, of ancient civilizations, of a time long forgotten. He saw the temple's creators, the guardians of the power, and he felt their wisdom flow through him. The knowledge was overwhelming, yet somehow familiar. He understood. The power he had unlocked was not just a force, it was a bridge to the past, a key to understanding the future. And with it came a responsibility. He had to use this power wisely, for the future of the world depended on it. As the energy surged through him, the symbols on the walls began to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, and the light in the room reached a blinding intensity. Ethan felt the power within him grow, expanding, filling him with a sense of purpose he had never known before. He was no longer just an archaeologist. He was a guardian, chosen by the temple to protect the world from the darkness that threatened it. The visions faded, and the energy slowly began to ebb. Ethan's hand remained on the pedestal, his breath coming in shallow gasps as he tried to process what had just happened. Zara stepped forward, her expression a mixture of pride and caution. "You've done it," she said softly. "The power is yours, but now, the real journey begins." Ethan looked at her, the weight of her words sinking in. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time since entering the temple, he felt ready. He had the power to shape the future. Now, he just needed to figure out how to wield it. Ithaca. As the last of the energy ebbed from Ethan's body, he stood. Still, his hand still resting on the pedestal, now feeling more like a part of the temple itself than the man who had entered it. The power that had surged through him just moments before had left an indelible mark, a connection he could neither deny nor fully comprehend. He felt the weight of responsibility settle over him like a heavy cloak, but with it came an undeniable sense of clarity, as though the fog of confusion had finally lifted. He was no longer just a curious archaeologist. He had become something more, something he had never imagined he could be. The future was now in his hands. "I did it," Ethan murmured, almost in disbelief. Zara stood beside him, her gaze soft but resolute. "Yes, you did. But this is only the beginning," she said, her voice carrying the weight of knowledge. Ethan looked at her, searching her face for any sign of doubt, but all he found was unwavering certainty. "I understand now," he said slowly. "The power of the temple, the responsibility. But what happens next? What do I do with all of this?" Zara's gaze turned toward the altar, where the golden light had now dimmed, leaving only the faintest glow. "You've unlocked the power, but you need to learn to control it. The world is not as simple as the visions you saw. The dark forces you glimpsed in the future are already stirring. They know that you've activated the temple's power, and they will stop at nothing to claim it for themselves." Ethan's heart tightened at her words. He had known, deep down, that there was more at stake than just uncovering ancient secrets, but hearing Zara say it aloud made it all the more real. He wasn't just a bystander anymore. He was a player in a game much bigger than himself. "How do I fight them?" Ethan asked, the question more out of instinct than anything else. Zara turned to him, her eyes filled with a quiet strength. "You won't fight them in the way you think," she replied. "The power of the temple is not meant for destruction. It is meant for creation, for understanding, for connection. The real battle lies within you, within your ability to guide the power, to use it for the greater good." Ethan nodded, absorbing her words, but doubt still gnawed at him. He had unlocked the temple's power, but did he truly understand how to use it? What if the responsibility was too much for him to bear? As if sensing his inner turmoil, Zara placed a hand on his shoulder. "It is natural to doubt yourself, Ethan," she said, her voice gentle. "But you must trust in what the temple has shown you. You were chosen for a reason, and the power is not yours alone to wield. You will not be alone in this." Her words seemed to resonate within him, and for the first time since he had entered the temple, he felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps he wasn't meant to do this alone. The path ahead was uncertain, but now, he knew one thing for sure. He had to keep moving forward. There was no turning back. "What's the next step?" he asked, his voice steady, though his heart raced. Zara gave him a small, encouraging smile. "The next step is to learn, to understand the full extent of the power you now possess. We will begin by seeking the knowledge hidden in the temple's depths. But be prepared, Ethan. There are more trials ahead. And only by mastering the power within you will you be able to confront the forces that are already moving against us." Ethan took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready. The journey was far from over, but he knew that he could face it now, with the temple's power as his guide. Ithaca. The deeper they moved within the temple, the more Ethan could feel the weight of the energy pressing around him. Each step seemed to echo in the vast silence of the stone corridors, amplifying the anticipation that hung thick in the air. It felt as though the temple was alive, watching, waiting for him to unlock its secrets. Zara walked beside him, her pace steady, but there was a tension in her posture, something beneath the calm exterior. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the next step would be the most crucial. "What exactly are we looking for?" he asked, trying to steady his racing thoughts. Zara turned to him, her expression unreadable. "The heart of the temple holds more than just power, Ethan. It holds knowledge, knowledge that can change the course of everything." "Change the course of everything?" Ethan echoed, his heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean?" Zara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she led him deeper into the temple, the walls now covered with intricate patterns, glowing faintly in the dim light. The temperature had dropped, and the air seemed heavier, more charged with energy. As they moved forward, the path began to narrow, leading them to a vast chamber that opened up before them. At the center stood a massive stone obelisk, carved with symbols that Ethan recognized from his earlier studies. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, the energy around it palpable. "This is it," Zara said, her voice soft but firm. "This is the source of the temple's power." Ethan approached cautiously, his fingers brushing the surface of the obelisk. The moment he made contact, a pulse of energy shot through him, stronger than anything he had felt before. It wasn't just a surge, it was as though the stone itself was alive, breathing, connected to him. Images flooded his mind. Visions of an ancient civilization, of people standing before the obelisk, their faces filled with awe. He saw them unlocking secrets, weaving the threads of fate, manipulating the very fabric of time and space. He saw the temple builders, their purpose clear, to protect the world from something far greater than any force they had ever known. The vision faded, leaving Ethan breathless and overwhelmed. "What was that?" he gasped, his voice shaking. "That was the knowledge of the temple," Zara replied, her tone somber. "It is not just a power you must control, Ethan. It is a responsibility. The temple was built to protect the world from a threat, a force that could consume everything if left unchecked. The obelisk is the key to stopping it, but it requires great sacrifice." Ethan's mind raced as he tried to process everything. The temple, the power, the responsibility, it was all too much, and yet, it was all tied to him. He wasn't just a witness to history anymore. He was a part of it. "What kind of sacrifice?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zara's eyes met his, her expression unyielding. "The power you've unlocked can stop the coming darkness, but only if you're willing to make the ultimate choice. You can choose to use the power to protect the world, but it will cost you something precious, something you may not be ready to lose." Ethan felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The weight of her words settled heavily on his chest. He had come here to uncover the mysteries of the temple, to learn about the past, but now he was facing a choice that could shape the future. "And if I refuse?" he asked, his voice trembling with uncertainty. Zara shook her head. "Refusal is not an option, Ethan. The darkness is coming, whether you're ready or not. You've already unlocked the power. Now, you must decide how to use it." The room seemed to close in on him, the weight of the decision pressing down like an invisible force. Ethan looked at the obelisk, the energy still flowing through it, and he realized the magnitude of the choice before him. There was no going back. He could feel the power, the responsibility, coursing through him, and with it, the knowledge that the future was in his hands. This was the moment that would define everything. The next step was his to choose, and there was no telling what would come next.